Do you enjoy some beautiful color inside the house at Christmas time and over the holidays? Maybe just some bright, giant blooms to cheer you up over the long, dreary winter? Then I have the plant for you. I'm Prairie Plant Girl. I live in Saskatchewan, Canada, and today I'm planting Amaryllis. Amaryllis are a beautiful flower. They bloom big, gorgeous, beautiful blooms, usually with 3 to 5, sometimes more blooms on a single bloom stalk. And they make a huge impact when they flower. They flower for a very long time. Each bloom I find can last over a week. And like I said, there's several blooms on each bloom stalk. So you have a long time of blooming as they don't all open up at exactly the same time. So a lot of people here in kind of upper North America, I guess it would be, we grow our amaryllis inside in the winter. If you live in a warmer climate, a tropical kind of climate, then these plants probably grow outside for you year round. But here where I live, they need a little bit of special care so we can have these beautiful blooms inside in the winter. I'm going to show you what I do to grow my amaryllis and something a little bit different that I'm going to try this year. Before I start planting the amaryllis, let's do a quick run through of what I have here for amaryllis bulbs. So I grow my amaryllis year over year. I usually pick up a new special one once in a while, or just something if I want a different color added in. So most years I'll grab something new, but I do grow them over year after year. So these bulbs that are out of their packaging here, not this one, have all come out of my garden, because we'll get into that more later, but they've all been dug up out of the soil from outside and brought in. They've been sitting inside in a cool area for about a month now, just kind of having some dormant time. So what I have is Prancer. And Prancer is quite prolific. It's giving me lots of babies. There's some side shoots coming. You can see one here. I can feel there's another one under the skin here, and there's several here. Now, I haven't had bulbs giving me babies long enough to know how long it's going to take for them to flower. I think from what I've read, it should take about 3 years, and I think this one's probably getting close. The rest probably need another year or so, but they still need to be planted. And Prancer is white and red. So this one shows it being very white with just a little bit of red striping, but they can also be almost just like completely striped red and white, almost like a candy cane look. So that's Prancer. This is Minerva. So this is a red flower with kind of white throat. And it has also produced some little like baubles or babies here on the side. And then this is Vixen. It's a little bit smaller, has a small baby coming along the side here. And Vixen is a deep burgundy red amaryllis, absolutely gorgeous flowers. Deep impact, I love Vixen. And then I picked up a white bulb. White, they always seem to be just labeled white when I pick up a white amaryllis. And when you buy them at the store, they can come a few different ways, but this is kind of the typical way. So they'll come in like a box or some sort of packaging. They'll usually have a little bit of information about how to grow them on the outside. And when you take it out, there'll be some sort of a pot. Usually they'll give you some sort of growing medium, either a bag of loose soil or like this has a block of cocoa coir, and then of course your bulb. This I like. This is the best setup I've seen, where it has the little drip tray and a pot with good holes in the bottom. I don't know how well you can see that there, but it has good drainage. Oftentimes they'll give you something like this that has no holes in the bottom. Now I'm going to use this today, so I have punched the little punch outs out of some of these to get it some drainage, because they do need drainage. Or they'll come with this, and this tray is usually jammed right on tight, and they won't actually drain out for you, even though it looks like it should have good drainage. If you are overzealous with your watering, this won't hold very much water and you can wind up with rot. But I've just loosened it off so that it's just gonna sit there and I can easily take it and make sure it's not dripping out, so that we don't have overwatering issues. Well, we do some more talking about what we're looking for in the Amaryllis bulb and how we get them prepared. I'm just gonna take this cocoa coir and I'm just gonna add it. I already have a little bit of potting mix in here, so I'm just gonna add some water to that so it expands and it can be part of this mix here. I do like to keep, as you can see, this at least one part of the box here that has a name and a picture on it, because I do forget what they look like from year to year, which each name is. And I need to get a tag to make a tag for this, so don't let me forget to do that. So when you're looking for your Amaryllis bulb, you want them to be firm and they shouldn't smell really like anything. So when you're shopping around for your Amaryllis, a lot of times you can find them at different big box stores and all sorts of places, or at your local garden center. Make sure that you get one that is firm, doesn't have any obvious bruises or gashes. The paper should be fairly intact, and you don't actually want a lot of sprouting. This one is just starting to throw up a few little sprouts on it, but nothing too serious. You can see they're still very white. It's been in the box, it's been kept nice. Now this one has almost a coolness that tells me it's hydrated, but it's not wet. And it has some old roots, but nothing that's moldy or looking like it's had too much moisture around it. You also want to look and see if you can see any obvious signs of bugs or disease on them anywhere. So especially these that I pulled up out of the ground, they've been sitting for a while. I want to look around, see if I can see anything hiding. You don't want to take the paper off, but just have a look around and see if there's anything that is trying to have its little winter nap in this plant here. And mine all look like they're pretty good. The next thing you want to do is, you can see how I trimmed my roots down pretty tight on these. That's because these old roots, they were going to dry up when I pulled this out of the ground, and I didn't need them rotting or causing any issues. This here has a few new roots that have probably started to want to grow, or these are just where they cut them off, but I prefer to just cut them down a little more. You don't want anything that's just going to contribute to mold, and this plant is going to grow new roots out of it, so just get rid of those. I've normally always planted my Amaryllis in soil, and I have lots of great videos on how to do that, but I will go through it real quick with you today. But something new that I want to try this year is planting them in water. Now, not directly right in the water. You want them to be raised up with just water underneath for the roots to get to. So you need a vessel that's going to either hold them up out of the water, like something like this, where you can put the bulb down but it doesn't drop right to the bottom. You don't want something like this. Is more what you might use for a hyacinth bulb or something, but the Amaryllis bulbs are quite large. Like this is actually a smaller one. You see how big that hangs over the edges. So, and because they get those big tall blooms, they get really long stalks and huge blooms on them, lots of blooms, this will just fall over and come out and maybe even just tip the whole container once it's full of roots. So this wouldn't be a suitable container. You could get just a really low decorative tray with some pebbles in it, or what I'm going to use is this this like rose bowl type bowl. So I thought this white bulb would be really nice in a container like this, and it's a good size and it's pretty nice looking. It doesn't have a bunch of knobbies or anything like some of my other bulbs, and I just thought it would be a nice kind of standalone plant. When you're planting your Amaryllis, you want to get them planted pretty early. Some varieties will bloom in as soon as 4 weeks after you plant them, and some are going to take more like 10. I find 6 to 8 weeks is about your average time that is needed, and so that's why it's early November, but I'm going to be planting my Amaryllis now. So to plant this one in the water, I just want to take some decorative stones. You want something that's going to be heavy, because these are going to get to be very heavy and they can easily topple over. And I'm just reaching, I'm not just dumping the rocks in because this is a glass container and I don't want to break it with these stones. Now you could get something, different colored stones, or you could use marbles or glass beads. It doesn't have to be rocks, but just something that's going to hold the bulb up and allow you to put some water in that medium without the bulb being in the water. So I have several centimeters, probably about this much, stones in there. And I do want to be able to hold the amaryllis tight in there a little bit. So I'm going to take it and just kind of nestle it a little bit. And then just know that I can't put the water up right to the top level of the rocks because the amaryllis bulb is sitting there. So it's just going to be down in the bottom. I might even put a few more stones and dump them in just to give me a little more room for water. And so that's all it's going to take for planting that. I'm just going to put some water in the bottom. Okay, so hopefully you could see there what I was doing. I tried to give you a closer look. So when I poured the water, I lifted the bulb back up just to make sure the water level wasn't coming past the bulb and in a space where it would touch the bottom of the bulb. And it was, and so I just added more rocks so that the bulb is just sitting on top of the rocks and not touching the water at all. You don't want the bulb to touch the water or you will have a rotten bulb. And that's not going to be pleasant. It's going to stink, it's not going to flower, and it's going to look ugly. So don't get your water on the bulb. This is all I need to do now. Now it's just a bright, warm place, and this will send up shoots. Sometimes they send up leaves first, sometimes they just go straight to a bloom stalk. So you just have to keep an eye on it and see what will happen. If I find with just having it sitting on top of the rocks, that it starts to get a little bit top heavy, I can always bring more rocks in and fill in around the side of it. Also, if you saw when I was pouring the water, I did get a little bit down the side of the bulb here. It's better to get it down, not touching the bulb, just because you don't want to get water inside the bulb and wind up again with rot happening. But this should start to send out roots down out of the bottom of the bulb and into that water, which could be kind of interesting to see it happen in this clear vase. And we'll just watch and see what happens. Get that out of our way. And I'll show you quickly how I pot up the amaryllis when I'm potting them into soil. So we just grab out a container, see how our soil is doing here. So that little cocoa pod is still kind of hydrating, but I think there's enough moisture in here. If I just break it up now, I'll be able to mix it in with the soil. And so you'll notice with the amaryllis that's in the water, there's no nutrients. I didn't add any nutrients to that water, and I don't plan to for quite a while now. Amaryllis don't really need anything. They don't even hardly need watering, really. That heat and the bright light, that's what's gonna tell it to start producing and growing. Bulbs, when they are going dormant and their leaves are dying back and they're done blooming, they're collecting all the kind of nutrients and oomph that they need for the next season from those leaves that die back, and they're putting it into the bulb. They're storing it in the bulb. The flower is already in there and they're ready to go for the next season. So I'm going to be putting 2 pots into this metal tin here with 2 different amaryllis bulbs in them. And amaryllis like to be planted tight. So you see these aren't very large pots for the bulbs that are going in them. They don't need a lot of space. That's maybe a little bit on the tight side, but it'll still be fine. This is ideal here where there's just kind of like a finger width around the bulb all the way around in the pot. And really we're not going to put them that deep into the pot. So they're going to be sticking out of the pot a little bit anyways. Amaryllis don't want to be planted deep, and they want to be planted pretty tight. So I'm just going to put my soil mix down in here. This doesn't have any fertilizer or anything added to it. And you can see I've filled it quite high in the bowl, in the container here. Hopefully you can tell. And so the Amaryllis is just going to sit on top. And I'm just going to tuck just a little bit of soil around the edges, just to come up like a third to halfway up the side of the bulb. And now it's more just so, you know, it has something to root into and give it that stability. You can see I just have room basically to get my fingers around it there. Some people will even put less soil than that. And again, you want containers that can drain. Amaryllis don't need a ton of water during this bloom period. They just need just light waterings just to keep them hydrated enough to bloom. So I'm just tucking this down until I can't push the soil right underneath the bulb anymore, just so it's just barely coming up where the bulb starts to widen out a little bit. And then that's all I need to do for that. So the same thing with that other larger bulb here. Let's just fill it up a little bit. And you see, you set that on there and see, because they're going so high in there, there is room around the bulb in the pot. Maybe not a ton, but there's enough. And I'm just gonna give that a little wiggle in, and I think that'll be enough for that one, the way it's sitting there. Squeeze them in, and I'll just top fill these with some of that decorative rock, just to give them a nice look. And then they can drain into this metal container, and I can easily take it, tip it, and dump it out if I manage to get too much water in there. So that's all I'll be doing. Make sure I put a tag in these so I don't forget before I do. So that's all I'm going to be doing for also the Minerva and the Vixen, is just putting them into a pot with just soil, just kind of at the bottom and up maybe a third to half the bulb, if that. And that's all they're going to need. And then they can go in a warm, bright place. If you want to prolong your bloom, you could take them now that they're potted. If you have a cooler space where they were sitting dormant, like I just had mine in my garage, it's very low light, it's cool but not freezing, it's around 13 Celsius, and that would keep them. And then I could just pull a pot of Amaryllis out every week or two, and then that will keep me with Amaryllis blooms through most of the winter once they start to take off. So what are we going to do with these little bulbils that probably aren't going to bloom, but they still do need to be planted up into some soil for the winter and grown on? So they need to have that growth time. So I'm just going to take them and put them into this container here, and we'll see if they all will fit in here or if I need to get something else. And then these, I don't know, we'll see. The greenery might be nice just as a little bit of greenery, because they will shoot up leaves. And I'm not even going to fill it super, super high. So I'm just going to fill it about half full, maybe 3/4. And I'm just going to take the bulbs and I'm just going to kind of nestle them in so they're just enough so they stand up. And I'm just putting, again, about a finger width of space around each one. So I'll probably need another pot by the looks of things. But that's what I'm going to do. And then these, I'll just let them grow and do their thing, let them die back naturally. And what I do with my Amaryllis is I just let them, you know, do their growth cycle through the winter. They'll put on leaves or blooms. Eventually they'll do leaves. I let the leaves die back completely. I cut them off at the top of the bulb, like you've seen these cut off here. And then I just set them kind of, usually they're still in a bright place, but they're out of the way. I usually just kind of throw them on a plant shelf or something, or a windowsill, out of the way. They're not very decorative at that point. And once it's warm enough that we're no longer freezing at night, they can go outside. I usually just throw them out in the pots like this, but this summer I actually put them in my garden. That way they got a lot better care with a little bit of fertilizer in the summer and proper watering. Once they've started to bloom and their blooms are starting to die back and the plant is starting to go into that dormant phase, that's when you want to just give them kind of an all-purpose fertilizer, even indoors, just to give them, you know, some extra energy to let them store that for the next season. You don't, until then, they don't really need any amount of fertilizer. If you really feel like you need to give them fertilizer, you give them a little bit of a phosphorus fertilizer, and that'll just help with root development, but they really don't need that. So yeah, this is what I'm gonna do with these little ones. And they'll just go somewhere where, you know, they're not gonna be front and center. They're not likely to give me any blooms or be anything too fancy this year, but it'll help them to just continue to put on growth and build up these bulbs, because you can see how they start out on the smaller side, and every year they just get a little bit bigger. So the more of these cycles they go through, the bigger they'll get, the stronger they'll get, and the better flower show they'll give when they do get to flowering. So it looks like I've used up most of my soil here, but I have a few more little bulbils and a couple more bulbs to plant. So I'm gonna get some more soil and we'll get those finished. So there's my Amaryllis all planted up and ready for the season. So a couple more things to note about Amaryllis is every single part of this bulb, I believe the roots, the leaves, the flowers, everything is poisonous. So if you have curious children or pets around that might get into them, this might not be the plant for you in your home. But if you have somewhere safe, that you can keep them, no one's gonna get into them, try and, you know, take a nibble on them, then they do make a beautiful decoration inside over the season. If you're growing your Amaryllis in water, most sources that I've found say that they can't be saved from year to year, that they often just don't do well after that. Some sources I've seen have said it might take them a couple of years to bloom again and put on a nice show, but that you can save them and grow them and eventually you'll get blooms again. So that's something to note before you try that if you're going to invest in some bulbs. They can be quite costly or they can be fairly inexpensive. It just kind of depends on where you purchase them and how you purchase them. You can get Amaryllis bulbs that are they come coated in a wax coating, and then you don't even have to do anything to plant them. You just set them out and they bloom. And I actually sometimes wonder if maybe I don't even need the water in the bottom of this, and if they would just bloom like that anyways, because they really don't need a lot of water or fussing. They're really easy care for the most part. Occasionally you get one that just is stubborn and doesn't want to bloom, but most of the time they're going to throw out beautiful blooms with you basically ignoring them, as long as they have somewhere warm and bright and sunny to grow. When they do start to put up their bloom stalk, they will bend to the light. So you want to make sure that you take your container and just give it a little quarter turn or so every day, so that you don't wind up with a bloom stalk that goes like this and they're so heavy they will topple the whole plant over. So if you want to keep that bloom stalk up nice and straight and tall, just the biggest job you have with an Amaryllis is giving the pot a little turn every day or two. I am going to take some of these pots and set them back out in my garage and just let them continue to be in kind of a cool dormant state. They will probably start to put on a few roots in that, but they won't grow as quickly as the ones that are in the warmth. And like I said, every couple of weeks I'll just pull a pot out, and then I should have Amaryllis blooming throughout most of the dreary winter here. These little guys, I'll just let them do their thing, and once it's warm enough again in the spring or early summer, I will just put them back outside and let them continue growing year after year. If any of these bloom, like this one is probably about 2.5, 3 centimeters across now. That's probably the biggest one I have. If it blooms, I'll let you know. And then maybe we'll have an idea of what size they need to be to bloom. But that's about all there is. Make sure you label them if you're going to be keeping them, and you're going to want to know, because once the leaves and everything, once the flowers are gone, really, they all look the same. So if you want to know what variety is what, make sure you have a little tag in your container. You can have it pushed down pretty far so that when you pull the bulb out, that's when you find it. But you do want to have that tag there with that name so that you know which it is later on. They also make great gifts. Last year I gave Amaryllis out in some decorative pots like this, and I just put a small pot inside and just planted them in here like this. And this container is a pretty heavy container, so it held the weight for them, and that worked well. So that's something, if you want to start planning now for some holiday gift giving, that's a great gift to give. I will put links below to other videos I've done about growing Amaryllis and how to care for them after the beauty and the show is done, and what to do with them when you're bringing them inside. And if you maybe already have had your Amaryllis growing and blooming when you're seeing this video and you're wondering what to do with them now, maybe you want to check out this video. Thanks for watching. Bye.